Welcome, everyone, to the Fantasy and Frame, the Waiver Show, the Waiver Wire Show, the Waiver Show, potato. Good people on both sides, right, Kev? We're here each week to help you put in those waiver claims, figure out who you need to add to your roster. That's right. This is the same crew from the draft show. I'm not hosting, but I did the intro because Stacy didn't want to talk too much. Totally understandable. I am Keith Fleming. I'm joined by some of my favorite people in the fantasy football community. Kev Tompkins, always stunting with them shades on to start the show. We still do not have the Frosted Tips high school picture, by the way.
I'm gonna have to live that down.
I'm gonna have to set an alarm on my phone at this point because
yes, you are, because I want to see it real bad. My good friend Erica, who quote Oklahoma State is a second half team, and you bet your ass they are.
We're a double overtime team. That's
how
what we
about
are.
Them
double
Cowboys?
Overtime.
I was very excited for you. Sorry, Britt Flynn. # not sorry. My man Rich, what's going on, buddy? How about them Vikings?
Looked good. They looked good. I mean, it was against the Giants, so you know. But
earmuffs, Joe Matz.
We'll see how next week turns out. As long as it's a close game, I'll be happy.
Well, I think y'all beat San Francisco last year, right?
I think we did.
So
I think you're right. Hey,
in Minnesota, take the chance.
And then
the lovely Stacy Perez. Stacy, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm back from Vegas. It's end of week 1 is in the books. Very excited. Love it. I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
All righty. Well, do we want to go by position? How do we want to do this tonight?
Yeah, we can go down the sheet by position. This is why I didn't want to do the intro, because mine is up first and I didn't want to be like, just completely taking over. So
I'm just saying the ratings soar, Stacy, when you're talking. When I, speak, maybe not so much. So don't ever be afraid to talk. Miss Stacy, why don't you tell us which QBs we need to add to our roster immediately?
Immediately. All right, guys. I'm going to give you our roster ads right here. Look at me handling the waiver wire graphics over here. Just
growing up before our eyes. We're so proud of you.
If you are watching on the show, you can see this graphic over here. If you are listening, I will read it out to you, so do not worry. First and foremost, we're going to start with not homer pick for me, but hometown pick for me. With the lovely and talented Baker Mayfield coming in at he is rostered in 42% of leagues, and that is sleeper numbers right now, guys. He carved up that Washington defense like it was Thanksgiving. I'm so sorry, Jorge. But don't worry, Jane Daniels looked fantastic, so good things to come for you. Baker just looked phenomenal out there. Chris Godwin looked great. Mike Evans looked great. The whole team just looked great. And, I know there was a lot of concern about the new OC coming in, Dave Canales leaving. But it doesn't look like anything's to be worried about, because Baker looks like the Baker that was promised years ago. I think he's got a new lease on life since coming to Tampa. I feel like that happens with every time that a new quarterback comes to Tampa, they just become a whole new person. Like, look at Tom Brady, Tampa Tom, Baker Mayfield now, like, just his wife did an interview with one of the sideline reporters. If you were in Tampa, you watched the local feed. I got to see that game in its entirety, just about like how comfortable he feels here and how much like their life has changed since coming to Tampa. So, I think that makes a big difference in how he's playing. So anyway, if you are out there looking for a new quarterback, maybe Jordan Love, you drafted him. He's obviously going to be out for a few weeks. You could do a lot worse than Baker Mayfield. He put up 29.66 points, making him QB2 in fantasy. Who would ever thought that, right? Baker Mayfield at QB2. He's got a pretty favorable schedule until they face Baltimore in week 7. So you're good for a while. You're not going to be able to expect that week 2 performance every week. Let's be real. But, I think last year he was putting up around like 16 or so fantasy points a week is what he ended up averaging at the end of the season. There were a lot of guys that couldn't even put up that, this week. So Baker Mayfield is one that I am definitely targeting if I need somebody to fill in that spot. Number 2 is going to be Sam Darnold coming in at 14%. He completed his first 12 passes, right, Rich? Were you so excited to see that?
So excited.
Yes.
So excited.
So all's not lost in Minnesota, right? There is somebody competent at quarterback, it would seem, back there to throw to Justin Jefferson and I guess Jordan Addison, as long as his ankle's okay. He went 19 for 24 on the day with 208 yards, one of only a handful of quarterbacks to even throw for over 200 yards. Got 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, finished the day with 15.6 fantasy points, making him QB 14 overall. It just really seems to be kind of finally coming into his own there. It seems like he's like really kind of flourishing finally and getting that chance to start there in Minnesota. So the only downside I can see for you is that their schedule is a little bit rough coming up. Next week, they face the Niners. Then after that, it's Houston. Then I want to say it's Green Bay. And then they finally face the Jets before their bye in week 6. So do be aware of that. He is going to have some tougher matchups coming up than the Giants. Last but not least, Derek Carr, New Orleans Saints quarterback, 42% roster.
Get out of here. Boo.
Right? I
We're
struggled.
an anti-Saints show.
My gosh,
Okay,
listen.
Stacey. Come on, you're a
Listen,
Buck fan, for God's sakes. What is going on right now?
I struggled so much with my last pick at QB. I couldn't pick Fields because he's rostered way too high. I looked at Jaden Daniels, another one also rostered way too high. So look, it's Derek Carr. Okay, I don't know.
How about Michael Penix? A little Penix.
How about Michael Penix? I mean, that might be coming sooner than we all think.
Maybe on like 15 roster spot like benches.
Listen, that could be.
From what I saw, it's coming quicker than
holy guacamole. That was like all of my.
You can't move.
Cousins. Oh, that was a rough day. I had a rough day Sunday, Keith. I'm not gonna lie, I had a rough day.
Me too.
Look, guys, like I said, it feels gross, right? It feels gross, but hear me out. All right. They've got a new OC in Clint Kubiak. He looked incredibly comfortable, in that blowout Sunday. He had 200 yards. Again, like we talked about, not that many quarterbacks threw for over 200 yards. 3 touchdowns, 21.3 fantasy points, QB6 on the day. He's got, next week in Dallas, so that's kind of a question mark. But like I said, he's out there. He looks comfortable. If you are desperate, right? And maybe you only drafted Jordan Love. Maybe you've got some other issues at quarterback that you've got to go get somebody, or maybe just even stream somebody for this week. Maybe the guys that you picked are, not looking so great because there was a lot of that going on Sunday. I know, like I said, you don't have to watch the game. Nobody's going to force you to watch a Saints game. All right. But you can just collect the points afterwards. It still counts.
All right, hold on. Before because I got some comments we got going on here, but first we got a question. And we like to give the people what they want. All right, guys. They lost Jordan Love to injury, offered Daniels and Zamir White for Jahmyr Gibbs. It's a 10-team PPR for context. Their other running back, unfortunately, is Kenneth Walker III. Man, I would ask. I think I would have to wait, right? Like
you can do way better, for return than Jahmyr Gibbs.
That's
in a 10-team,
in
a 10-teamer, Zamir White is pretty much droppable. Like his role coming into week 2, like 25% of the routes, 38% of the snaps, well behind Alexander Madison. So like Zamir White is clearly not what we thought he was going to be. Like he's probably like a 16th rounder on like Underdog as far as like what Zamir White is. So you could do for a Gibbs, a borderline first rounder, you could do way better than that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out though. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just going to say like a 10-team PPR. I feel like the waiver wire has to be deep enough where you can find somebody that is going to make up for what you lost in Jordan Love. Like I'll
talk about those guys in a few minutes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, no, I really
There's plenty, buddy.
Yep.
All right. Stacey,
I want to
all in agreement.
Yeah, I think so. I totally agree with you guys. While you guys were answering that question, I saw a question here from TFF dudes about Stafford, and I just wanted to get to that real quick before we moved on. So the reason I did not pick Stafford is because he's rostered in over 60%. So the numbers that we're using here on the show, you've got to be rostered in 50% or lower. So good point. Stafford did look great out there. He does have a good matchup against the Cardinals. He's rostered in 60% of sleeper leagues. So definitely go out there and take a look. If he's available in your league, that's a great one to add as well.
For sure.
Yep.
Who's winning a game of tag?
I feel like
the real
Erica would
question.
sneakily win.
Not me.
Erica.
Not
No
it.
way.
Not it.
I'm so
I'm
slow.
winning. I'm
I
winning.
am.
I don't
Period.
run. I don't run.
I don't like
Unless
to
you're being,
lose.
unless
No.
you're being chased.
I don't like.
I don't
to lose.
even like
I'll get a
running.
damn golf cart if I have to and ride around and tag you people. I am going to add. I want to add one thing on Baker because I think he is so severely underrated at this point. He has scored 19 points or more in 7 of his last 8 games, dating back to last year. This is now 5 of 8 games that he's thrown for 300 plus yards. And I mean, I got to give Kev credit. He was talking about McMillan. I think Stacey, you were talking about him this summer as well. That is a whole nother dimension to the Tampa Bay offense. Plus we see Bucky Irvin. As a Falcons fan, it makes me sick how good Tampa's offense looked. And I understand they were playing the Washington defense, and a lot of offenses are going to look good versus Washington. Sorry, Jorge, I should have said earmuffs before that. But I do think this offense is going to be elite this year. With Godwin being back in the slot, there's just so many things. And the fact that Baker is that available, and by the way, he's going to be in Detroit in a dome where, if you don't remember last year, him and Mike Evans absolutely torched the Detroit secondary, which it appears they're still having issues because Puka goes down and the Rams still go crazy. So to me, Baker is not only somebody you should add just if you have love or whatever, but somebody, unless you got 2 really good QBs, I would definitely love having Baker as my backup, even if I had one of those stud quarterbacks.
Yeah, you're right. They do take on Detroit. In Detroit, then they've got Denver, Philly after that, but then they've got Atlanta, the Saints, then Baltimore. So they do have some pretty favorable matchups coming up.
I'll add a couple things too. As far as for Derek Carr, Clint Kubiak is absolutely transformed this offense. Last season, they were dead last in pre-snap motion and in play action, per Jacob Gibbs. Fantastic Twitter account at JAGibbs_23 puts out a lot of great data. First in pre-snap motion, third in play action in week 1. So it only took about 12 offensive coordinators for Derek Carr to actually get a system that might actually help him. So that's very, very bullish for Derek Carr joining us in this century, as far as what NFL teams are doing with playmakers, with their quarterback to put them in the best positions to succeed. And then Baker Mayfield, gets Jalen McMillan to add to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Both had, Mike Evans had the touchdown. Chris Godwin had a lot of volume. McMillan had the touchdown as well. 4 touchdowns for Baker Mayfield. I believe that was Laura Oakman, the queen of Galvanize, who did that interview with Baker Mayfield. And he was just saying, it's nice to have some stability. It's nice to be able to have fun while you're playing. And I know the having fun quotient doesn't exactly help you in fantasy football, but considering he's been a nomad for the past few years, going to Carolina and then that second half with the Rams, and then now with Tampa Bay, where he's got some stability now and weapons and an offense with Liam Cohen, that's certainly going to help. So I'm totally down for Baker Mayfield. It's if you need a stopgap quarterback, if you're rostering Jordan Love or Kirk Cousins or somebody you want to just get some decent production out of, that can have a sort of ceiling. Baker Mayfield's a pretty good option. So is Derek Carr.
Kev, how much fab would you drop on Baker?
It depends on if you really need a quarterback. If you really need that quarterback, I'm probably putting 15 to 20%.
I think that's probably a good range.
Yeah. I'm not putting too much on it. It's tough to put that kind of fab on a quarterback.
Yeah.
Especially in redraft where they're so, I don't want to say they're plentiful because it obviously is context dependent on your league, but if there are some out there and he is the best of those options, 15 to 20% seems good.
Yeah, I think so. All right, guys. So we are going to move on over to wide receiver. Erica, hit us with those wide receivers. Who you got?
Okay, so first on my list to pair with Mr. Derek Carr would be Rashid Shaheed. So right now he's only rostered in 44% of leagues. He necessarily wasn't the most targeted guy for the Saints, but he did have 5 targets and caught all 3 of them and had 73 yards and a touchdown. And he ended up being wide receiver 11 on the week. So he was also on the field for 68% of the time and had 33 yards after the catch. So I thought that was a pretty stout stat there from him. And he's clearly the wide receiver too. I mean, Olave didn't do, sadly, much of anything on the field. And Derek Carr liked throwing to Shaheed. So that was nice to see. Then next, I've got Alec Pierce. So only 2% rostered. I have him stashed in a Dynasty league that he's been on my bench for a while now. So I was happy to see that when I was going through waivers today. So Anthony Richardson targeted him 3 times, and he had 125 yards and a touchdown. So he ended up being 8 overall on the week with 21.5 PPR fantasy points. And as we saw, Richardson can throw the ball. Like, it's insane the arm strength that guy has. And Pierce was the one to benefit from it because he got a 60-yard touchdown and then a 57-yard reception. So impressive. I liked Pierce. And like I said, I've had him stashed in Dynasty, so I like him. I think he'll be good.
He waited for me to like basically say he was garbage. I think it was either last week or the week before, and then he goes out and has this big game. So thanks for letting me stick my foot in my mouth, Alec Pierce. Appreciate that.
And then they also play the Packers this week, and the Packers gave up a lot of big plays.
I'm not worried. We got dogs. We got dogs at safety. Not worried.
Yeah, that's not the only thing I'm not worried about is our defense.
Xavier McKinney, 2 more interceptions.
And then last on my list is DeMarcus Robinson, who is only 12% rostered. It was kind of a toss-up here between him and Tyler Johnson, who both saw work after Puka went out. And we know that Puka is going to be on the IR for about 4 weeks at least. So one of the two should be, a viable option. I kind of see them in the both of the same realm. But Robinson was on the field for 92% of snaps, only behind Cooper Kupp. And he got 7 targets for 42 yards. But, after a whole week of practice, he should be able to do a little bit better on the field. But even going back to last year, with Kupp and Puka healthy, he saw 22 targets, 218 yards, and a touchdown in the last 3 games of last year. So I think his usage is going to go up without Puka.
DeMarcus is great.
Yeah, I liked him. I was looking for some replacements for Puka because I drafted him in the very last draft I did on Friday in Vegas. And when I saw him go out, I got to tell you, I almost just threw up like right there. It was, I'm so upset. I'm so upset right now.
I don't want to throw a ton of cold water. It just stinks because I wish the Rams had better options outside of Puka because with Tyler Johnson has a 640 route sample with a literal 1 yards per out run, and DeMarcus Robinson has a 2,500 yard route sample with a 1 yard per out run. So neither have been very efficient in their careers and over a large sample, and that's where I kind of have some issues where I would probably lean toward Colby Parkinson being a bigger beneficiary of Puka being out, potentially Jordan Whittington working his way in, because we did see the Rams, if a player is not performing, they will just straight up replace him, like we saw with Tutu Atwell, with DeMarcus Robinson replacing him and him having a nice second half surge.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. If he had a good second half surge, don't you think that, to me, I would want to give him a shot again this year with all the opportunities coming up because he played really well. That was a 7-8 game sample size last year.
Right, and the Rams being so efficient and their scheme clearly working, being one of the most fantasy fruitful, schemes out there to want to target players, kind of it makes their outlook a little bit better. Where Sean McVay can put those guys in positions to succeed. Like we just talk about Clint Kubiak. It's really about these offenses that are forward thinking and know what they're doing and are using pre-snap motion and are putting guys in good positions and clearly,
running a lot of pistol.
Yeah, that too. So for that, if you're hard up on wide receivers, like I can think of worse options than Demarcus Robinson and even Tyler Johnson, and maybe throw a flyer in a deeper league on Jordan Whittington because he could find a role too.
For sure.
So we got a question here in the chat real quick. Wait, MF Doom says Superflex 3 wide receiver tight end premium 10-man roster. He's got Hurts, Caleb, and Deshaun Watson. I'm so sorry for you. He is thinking to spend about 40 to 50% on Sam Darnold. I feel like that's a lot, but if it's a super flex, I mean, I don't think you can hurt Watson. Caleb probably will get better, but what do you guys think about these options? Anybody want to jump in, have some strong feelings?
Go ahead, Rich.
No. I was gonna say I do think Caleb will get better. I get a lot of the concern with what we saw this last week, but the defense isn't going to be the thing that carries them through the games moving forward. Caleb's gonna have to figure it out at some point here. So I do think that he will. 40 to 50% dropping on Darnold seems like a lot to me. I mean, I guess it's super flex. So there's probably not a lot of options out there, but I'd probably bring it down to more like 25 to 30, maybe. Maybe that's
and
what
also,
I was thinking.
You don't have to start a quarterback just because it's super flex. I mean, Caleb Williams got 11 points in most leagues. You have wide receivers going out there getting way more points than that.
Go off, Queen. Go off.
And it's a 10-person team, which to even further her point,
you got solid receivers there.
Yeah. It was 7.2 points to be exact for Mr. Caleb Williams.
Exactly.
Whoa.
You know how many dynasty leagues I'm starting like Tank Dell in the super flex just because I don't like stuff like that. If you have, a position of strength, you're not like beholden to start Will Levis or like somebody of that ilk because he plays quarterback. I get the floor aspect of that, but I would still rather start, there's kind of a line of demarcation where like a certain point with like wide receivers or even running backs, at some point you have to start the quarterback. But if you've got like, I don't know your roster situation clearly, but like if you have decent depth at either of those positions or even tight end, because it is tight end premium, like you could even throw out I don't know what's a mid, like a Freiermuth or something like that, and he might get you there too. So it depends on the roster, but
I was gonna say, the 16-team Dynasty League last week, I lost by 4 points because I started Bryce Young and a super flex. I could have started Dortch, I could have started Ladd, and they would have outscored him, and I would have won. So to further Kev's point, just play your best guys.
Bryce Young in this economy.
Right. Well, again, I am new to super flexes. I'll go ahead and be honest, and I'm going, I don't want to be I would literally have been the only guy not starting 2 QBs. And right after, I'm going, why did I do that?
Don't bend the peer pressure.
Then here you guys. I've learned very quickly. It's one thing if it's decent QBs, right? But it's if it's a bad matchup or it's QB, you'd have no idea. You don't just have to start 2 QBs. I'm learning that.
Yeah. There's a 5-show stretch of fantasy and frame shows on this channel where the first draft or first daily fix, I was so optimistic about Bryce Young, Keith.
Yeah.
And then last week on the daily fix, I was about Bryce Young, and then we are fully
it's
back
over.
to
It's over.
It is as Jover as it gets for Bryce Young.
It was sad.
It is. It's I honestly, it is sad. It was really sad to watch that game. I don't want to belabor it, but man,
and you could have had CJ Stroud, plus you traded away I feel as a Falcons fan, when I'm feeling sorry for a franchise, you are effed. Because that's just the way it is.
I think I saw on McAfee today that they were giving away tickets for $1.80. That's how low you could get tickets to Panthers games.
They're sitting there in a stack at a Dollar General. You can go buy your, plus a conditioner, and then get like a stack of Panthers tickets.
Got kids going door to door begging people to come. Please.
They're selling candy, and like they have it's rubber banded underneath the thing. Like, no, just give me the candy.
Just give me the candy.
Let's not get NFL football tickets into the.
The hat come with a bowl of soup. Maybe you get the tickets and a bowl of soup or something. So
that is rough. All right, let's go into running backs. Kev, you're the running back whisperer. Tell us who we should be spending our money on.
I think the first one should be fairly obvious if you watch Monday Night Football. That is Mr. Jordan Mason, who is probably the best waiver claim you can make regardless of position. So Jordan Mason, over 140 yards rushing. He looks like Laquan Jones. He's probably eaten more strawberries in his life than Laquan has. But he's probably a better runner of the football than Laquan is too. Shout out, buddy. 30 yards rushing over expectation, fourth among 34 qualified running backs. Also ninth in success rate. CMC's Achilles tendonitis is going to be an issue. Mason has pretty much a standalone value with CMC, even if he's healthy and active. So I'm thinking as like when CMC got traded to the Niners and Elijah Mitchell still had a standalone role in that offense, I could see Mason kind of keeping that role, but Mason is a much better running back than Elijah Mitchell ever was. So, I mean, I'm not just trying to like bank this off a 1 game sample, but Mason looks so decisive and a much more physical runner.
Perfect.
Than I think.
Back.
Yeah.
Perfect
like turn up the nitro on Jeff Wilson, and that is Jordan Mason.
Great.
So, yeah, I do like Jordan Mason going forward. I think he needs to be a priority ad in all leagues, no matter if you need a running back or not. The next guy I will tout is a guy that I've been touting all offseason is Bucky Irving. Rachaad White, go figure, still one of the worst actual running backs in the league. Not receiving backs, like actually running the football. Was dead last out of 34 runners in rush yards over expectation, minus 32 with such names as Gus Edwards, Jamal Williams, Zeke Elliott, right around where he was. And then, Bucky Irving was much more efficient in his carries than Rachaad White. So going into what he did, I believe it was 9 for 62 for Bucky Irving, which is good for what's that, about 6 yards a carry or so. So look, I think Bucky Irving still has a path to standalone role. I mean, he's still a pretty good receiving back. I don't think Rachaad White's going to be losing anything like that. But I'm very interested to see if Bucky Irving can work his way in to the rushing component of that offense. That with knowing how Tampa can move the ball through the air, it's only going to lead to much more and better utilization. Just looking at what Bucky Irving did as far as his actual like workload splits and situation, Bucky Irving and Rachaad White completely split the short yardage snaps. Bucky did cede some of the third down work with Rachaad White, but that's pretty much Rachaad White's bread and butter because I believe he's a better pass blocker and a better receiver. So, but early downs, I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for more early down work for Bucky Irving to mix in with some of the short yardage and then maybe get a handful of third downs. If he can get that, Bucky Irving is a very usable high-end running back 3. So I think you still got time to add a guy like Bucky Irving where he might go under the radar even with the 9 for 62 because people just do not like to get guys that are not going to be instantly productive off of waivers. So go get him now. And if you can stash him, absolutely do that. And then the kind of the same bet as Bucky Irving, but with a better running back ahead of him. I mean, for now, I would say a better running back is Tank Bigsby, who outproduced Travis Etienne. 12 carries, 73 yards. Etienne had the touchdown. Looking at just some of that usage as well. By the way, big shout out to Nathan Yonke for a lot of the running back usage stats. Two carries for Etienne to every 1 for Bigsby on early downs. They both split short yard stuff. And then Bigsby took a little bit of the third down as well from Travis Etienne. So it's about the same bet as Bucky Irving. I don't think Tank Bigsby is as good of a receiver. I do think he's a better pass blocker than Bigsby. So for like a real life role, Bigsby could work his way onto the field and kind of eat at ETN. I know last year they wanted to use ETN kind of by himself and maybe sprinkle in a couple guys here like Bigsby, who kind of failed last year. And then they ended up using a lot of Dearness Johnson.
He did. That's why I hate him as well for what he did week 1, because I was all over him last year. And then this year you paid him, and it's like, oh, look, he can run again.
But the thing is players improve. And they
I agree.
And they used Dearness Johnson last year, trying to get some kind of spell. And he was like, fine. But if this is what they can get out of Tank Bigsby and improve Tank Bigsby in year 2, then Tank Bigsby needs to be rostered in a lot more than 11% of leagues. I think he should be. I think as far as like contingency wise, if something happens to ETN, I think Bigsby is a sneaky guy that can be like a high end running back too in the majority of leagues. So I think he's kind of a get in on the ground floor guy as well as Irving. I would put Irving over Bigsby in terms of contingency, but Bigsby certainly needs to be rostered more.
Hey, Kev, we got a comment here from Mr. Scampers about that blowout down in Tampa, being cautious with Bucky. I was just looking up some stats while you were talking, and as far as like being efficient with your yards per attempt, we got Rachaad White at 2.1 yards per attempt. Do you want to know what Bucky Irving's? 6.9.
I was going to say it's a nice 6.9.
That's a lot. Yeah, nice.
That's nice.
69.
And the thing is, we've got so big of a sample with.
You didn't get the joke.
we've got such a big sample with Rachaad White that it's more of the same. So how often can you just keep trotting out Rachaad White to be so inefficient on the ground when you've got a guy like Bucky Irving? I think it's a matter of time for Bucky Irving. And Rachaad White's always going to have the stranglehold on receiving, on 2-minute drill stuff, on third down. I don't think that's in jeopardy, even though Bucky Irving is a capable receiver. But if he can get some goal line work, if he can get some early down stuff and just be efficient with that, then we got something there.
He gets it.
We got a quick question before we move on to tight. Oh, Erica, did you want to chime in?
I was just going to say, in my waiver article today, I also have 2 of the 3 running back options that you listed, Kevin. So we're on the same wavelength.
You love to see it.
Okay, tell the people where they can find your waiver article.
Yeah, over on Fantasy and Frames. Every Tuesday it's going to get dropped. So it came out a couple hours ago. And yeah, would love for you guys to check it out.
Yeah, check it out over at fantasyandframes.com. You can also find it linked on our Twitter. That means you guys have to give us a follow. Give Erica a follow over there at America with a K 108 and fantasyandframes.com. We are at Fantasy and Frames everywhere on social media. So if you want to make sure to get our waiver information, a little bit more in-depth detail in those articles, please go ahead and do that. Also, we've got Gary Davenport's article is out right now with your IDP ads for the week. So if you are in an IDP ad, that is a must for you to go check out. We've got one question here before we move on to tight ends. I want to get to that. Here we go. Ikavelli, I hope I'm saying your name right. This is in a dynasty. Would you trade Chris Olave for Jay Williams? I'm going to assume you mean Jamison Williams and not Jamal Williams. Would you trade Olave for Rashee Rice? I don't know. What would you guys do? Would you Olave for Williams and then Olave for Rice?
He's saying trade away Olave for either of those guys, right?
Yes.
Yes, I would. I mean, you got one is with Patrick Mahomes, and no, I'm just talking about. I mean, it's dynasty, right? What
the question he had in a dynasty, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, I would. I'd rather have Jamison Williams. To me, he's my favorite receiver from 2 years ago. We're starting to finally see that talent, and then I mean, when I'm getting arguably the number 1 receiver or target with the best quarterback in the game, and he's what 23? Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah. Hopefully he's not in jail next season. I don't think that's probably going to end up going anywhere. But I do have to worry about that because, we're not worried about it this week or this year. So
it's Texas, Stacey. He'll be fine.
It does not exist. We are not worrying about that. And it's not bag defending whatsoever.
No. And honestly, that's not going to be reason enough for you not to trade for him, I think, personally.
Yeah, go get Rice.
I've traded Olave in every league. I had him in 2
wow.
dynasty leagues, and I keep trading him away.
You know how much I hate Saints, so way to go, Erica.
Oh man, that's funny. All right, guys. Last but certainly not least, we have got, well, for our offense anyway, we've got our tight ends here. Throw it up here. Take it away, Rich.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, the obvious first ad is going to be Isaiah Likely if he's available in your league. Looks like he's only rostered in about 18.3% of leagues. Just to get the easy one out of the way, if you were watching the Thursday night game, right? Or Friday night game? Thursday night game. Yeah, that Friday night game is still throwing me off.
I can't talk about that.
Days of the week. What are those?
Right. But anyways, 9 catches on 12 targets, 111 yards and a touchdown for what we would assume would be the second tight end on the team. Like, those are some pretty hefty numbers. He put up 26.1 points in PPR last week. He was tight end 1. Nobody got even close to challenging him for that tight end 1 spot. The thing that worries me is Andrews is still there, obviously, and so you have to wonder, like, was this just like a fluke? Is something going to change? The one thing that I did notice, though, is that Andrews only had 66% snap share, whereas Likely had 74%, so he was out on the field a little bit more. And having that consistency of having whoever is out there more is what I want to have targets on, and whoever it is that Lamar is throwing to. I mean, Andrews only had, I think, 2 targets last week. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm going out and getting Isaiah Likely where I can. I'm dropping about 16 to 21% of my fab on him. Hopefully that extra 1% is going to be enough to seal the deal here for you. Beyond him, Colby Parkinson from the Rams really surprised me. He came out 4 catches on 5 targets with 47 yards. Just the fact that he was as big of a part of the offense as he was pretty was good to see. He had 8.7 points in PPR, so nothing huge, but he was tight end 7 last week. Seems to be a big part of the Rams offense moving forward. So I do love the volume of targets that he got. He was on the field for 88% of the snaps, which is huge. You know, getting on the field is what it's all about, with Higbee not being there right now and everything being on, I think he's on IR. I'm going out and getting Colby Parkinson where I can in leagues. And honestly, with Puka being out, you guys were talking about the wide receivers, who's going to pick up wide receivers for Puka being out. I kind of wonder if he's going to get a little bit more of a target share just being there already. So I'm dropping 5 to 10% fab on him. And then beyond him, Foster Moreau, which did not expect myself to be saying Foster Moreau on here anytime soon.
More Saints. More Saints, Keith.
Yep.
I'm going on fucking strike. This is bullshit.
Sorry, Sarah.
Sorry, Keith. I really did. That's all right. Yeah, it's all good.
It got me.
I'm a little lightheaded from laughing.
Wow.
All right, so 4 catches on 4 targets for 43 yards and a touchdown. So he was obviously used in the red zone. He was on the field for 77% of the time. The thing that surprised me the most was the fact that I thought Juwan Johnson was going to be the tight end that you wanted there, and Juwan Johnson was only on the field for 34% of the time. So they obviously have a lot of trust with Moreau over Johnson. At least in the beginning here. We'll see how things progress down the road. But I'm grabbing. I actually did like every league that I have him in, because he's only 0% rostered. Every league that he was available, I was going and putting in a 5 to 10% fab bid on him. I do expect him to be a big part of the offense moving forward. He was tight end 2 last week with 14.3, so he was the next closest to Isaiah Likely. Yeah, I'm just really interested to see if that continues to be a thing, if it was just because of the way that the Saints were playing last week. I don't know. Do you have any insight on that? Like that would really surprise me with Foster Moreau, but I'm interested.
Yeah, Keith's our noted Saints expert on this show. Everybody, if you're
they all suck. Okay, so there's your analysis.
Tell us how you really feel.
Ooh.
I just did. They're horrible.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
not for nothing.
They're 1-0. We're 0-1, but whatever.
The eye test with Mark Andrews, like, he just didn't look right out there. Like there just looks like there was something off, you know? And fun story, Isaiah Likely, right? So I'm in Vegas last week, Thursday, Friday. We're drafting before Thursday, before the Thursday night game. Isaiah Likely is going in like, this is the tight end premium, but he is going in like 13th, 14th, 15th round, right? There were drafts that took place just immediately following that Thursday night game. Homeboy went in the second round. He went the 210. Okay. Like immediately after, there were like 4 drafts going on. He went in the second, third, and fourth rounds in those drafts. So just like seeing that was wild. Like there were so many people that just stuck around that weren't even drafting just to watch and see like where is Likely gonna go. And that just blew my mind.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin. No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say to add to the Likely stuff. I mean, Keith pretty much nailed everything during the offseason as far as Isaiah Likely, and the Ravens, lo and behold, made 12 personnel their base set. 52.7% of their plays per next gen stats were out of 12 personnel. I think it's really the fact that they have such limited depth at wide receiver. So finally, they're doing the smart thing and putting Isaiah Likely out on the field, who is probably I would say he's better receiver than Bateman. Certainly better than Nelson Aguilar.
Their best down the field receiver. Like Zay Flowers is probably a better all around receiver, but if you're talking about like being able to actually push the ball down the field, he's definitely their best option.
Yeah, and as far as like cushion, as far as like separation, as far as tight ends go and wide receivers, Isaiah Likely was 4th with average of 5 yards of separation at the time of the catch. Only David Njoku, Dallas Goedert, and Jane Reed were ahead of him as far as wide receivers or tight ends that had more average yards of separation than Isaiah Likely. So that's something very bullish that he is obviously a man among boys there, at least in the first game against the Kansas City Chiefs, which their secondary, even though they lost to Jerry Sneed, is still a pretty good unit. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that Todd Monken is an extraordinary play caller. I don't know what happened in the playoff game. I really don't. But if you just look at UGA year 1 with Stetson, because he was figuring it out, right? It was his first year together. And then you look at UGA's offense year 2. And like now you have Lamar and these guys. And like I said, that he figured out a way to play Bowers and Washington together, even though Washington was at the time the better all-around tight end, but Bowers was just such a good pass catcher. They had them both on the field a ton. So I am very happy about Likely. Of course, I didn't really play him in any of my leagues, even though I spent the last 5 months saying he's the best Ravens pass catcher and they were going to use him more. And then I chickened out, but luckily Jorge and other people benefited off of the things I said this summer.
Right. And I'll say one more.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say about one more thing about Foster Moreau. I would say that I'm a little concerned about Juwan Johnson's foot injury that he had and came back from. So I think that has something to do with the routes and snaps that Foster Moreau played. I do think Taysom Hill is independent of like any of the tight end rotation there because he's mainly a package guy where you've got
he's Swiss really Army knife.
Yeah. Well, he's so game script dependent that in a blowout against Carolina, they barely needed to use him. But in like tighter matchups, they're gonna have to. So I do think that Juwan Johnson's foot may be hurting him more than the team has let on. And teams have never lied about players with injuries before. So
Christian McCaffrey.
For real.
Literally gonna do the same thing.
Yeah. But that's the question I have about Foster Moreau. But if that foot injury is worse than it let on, Foster Moreau's at least a solid option where he's going to be out there. And then I'll pump our good friend John McGlynn here. Likely went a lot higher in Dynasty and Redraft and ADP. Seems like a headache as long as Baltimore are running 2 tight end sets. I would say that, looking at what Likely, I mean, Mark Andrews ran 74% of routes, 74% of snaps. And Likely was like right there at 66 and 68. I think those two can coexist together. I don't think it's a one or the other kind of thing with Likely and Andrews.
Yeah, I was like, you're probably going to start both those guys. if you, I mean, not together probably, but like there's probably not a reason to not, start both of them there. I also wanted to throw out real quick, Preston, our guy Preston Evans over here in the chat,
Absolutely.
wanted to know if we had talked about Chig Okonkwo. Just
Look
real quick,
at my article.
Yeah, look at Erica's article, guys. He is only rostered in 13% of sleeper leagues and was your tight end 6 on the day. So go take a look at Erica's article. Again, you can find that at fantasyandframes.com. All right, guys. Last but not least, for our IDP, this is info coming from our dear leader Jorge Edwards. Gave us some info. Kev, you want to take it away with the IDP info for everybody?
I can absolutely do that. The reviews are in. I am now an IDP thought leader, so as is my duty here on this beautiful show. Thank you to Fantasy Frames
You're something.
for allowing me to become an IDP thought leader.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I did not think that any of these names did not exist. 52 minutes ago. When the show started. I don't want you to think anything of the sort. But as far as defensive players, I hope I'm not butchering this. DeMarvion Overshown, who is definitely a real player in the NFL, linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, 1.8% available on Sleeper, while only playing 57.9% of defensive snaps among his fellow linebackers on the Dallas Cowboys. Look, his name is so long he could barely fit in on the screen. That's how you know he's a good player. I mean, just the name length equity. Overshown utilized his impressive athletic abilities and skill set, straight up dominated the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. Posted extremely impressive 18.2% tackle rate and a 0% missed tackle rate. Make your tackles, boys and girls. That's going to get you to the promised land and get you on this show as the top waiver wire IDP option. While his low defensive snap share can be a bit off-putting, it was quite clear, easy for me to say, that Overshown just after 1 week is making a push to be the second best defender on the Cowboys behind Micah Parsons. Go out and grab him, put him on your rosters right now before he goes off again this coming week, becomes a high target of interest for IDP fantasy managers next week. Good look ahead option for you linebacker needy IDP savants. Let's go to an edge rusher, Harold Landry out of BC for the Tennessee Titans. Landry did spend much of last season getting himself back into form after a season-ending injury 2 years ago. As such, his perceived value among IDP fantasy managers was not what we like to call high. But, however, if you followed our advice here at Fantasy and Frames down the stretch of last season, you would have noticed that toward the end of 2023, Landry was starting to play like the all-pro we knew he was capable of. Fast forward to a healthy offseason, and in week 1, Landry went ballistic, tallying 2 quarterback hits, 6 total tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 sack, for a total of 19 fantasy points using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. 92.9% defensive snap share on the day makes him a borderline elite option on the defensive line on your IDP fantasy rosters. Go get him. And Julian Blackmon, defensive back for the Indianapolis Colts. You can rest easy, Keith. There is no Saints player on this list. Entering a second season at strong safety, Blackmon maintained his 100% defensive snap percentage of team-leading box snap percentage at 39.2%. Blackmon was second in the NFL among defensive backs with 13 total tackles on Sunday, finished as DB 10. You are very welcome, Kimberly A. We are just crushing it here with the Fantasy and Frames. Thank you, Jorge, for the IDP stuff here. 17.3 points using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Again, finished as the defensive back 10. As consistent as there is at the position, roster this. As Jorge wrote, hashtag tackle machine. And I promise you won't regret it. Back to you, Stacey.
All right, guys. So real quick before we go for the night, Keith is going to give us his priority ads for the week. Out of the ones that we have discussed, Keith, who are you looking at your top 3 that people need to be going and making an absolute priority to get on their team?
I just want to say, first of all, don't rush me, Stacey. I know we got a show about what you're going to say real quickly. How dare you? Second of all, I think Kevin was definitely the kid that volunteered to read back in elementary school. He did such a fantastic job with the IDP stuff.
The
there.
one thing that the New York State public education system did for me.
I love it. I'm serious. That was a beautiful job. I loved it. Jordan Mason, don't really need to add much. He should be the number one waiver wire this week. The Niners with Shanahan, they're going to run the ball. 2018, 1,900 yards. 2019, 2,300 yards. 1,889 yards. 2,121. That was before CMC. They'll be just fine, even if something is really wrong with CMC. They run that rock. Isaiah Likely, again, they said a lot of what you need to know, but he was one of 4 players with 12-plus targets last week. And if you look at wide receiver targets per route run, he was 11th at 34%. He's not a wide receiver technically. He's a tight end. That's even better for your lineups. Guys like Kupp had 41%. Tyreek Hill, 36%. Garrett Wilson, 36%. CeeDee Lamb, 35%. Isaiah Likely, to Kevin's point, 34%. He may end up being their number one wide receiver this year. It's not crazy. And then I want to add one person that nobody said, but PPR leagues, Wan'Dale Robinson. Guys, this guy, target point machine in PPR league. He had 6 games last year that he played 70% plus snaps. 5 of them were at the end of the season in those games. 6 targets, 5 receptions, almost 13 points per game in PPR leagues. Now, he didn't quite play 70%. Week 1, he played 68%, but 12 targets, 6 receptions, 1 rush attempt. Again, over 11 points. He is going to do that week after week. We were talking about eating your vegetables. Wan'Dale Robinson is the ultimate eat your vegetable guy, but for a wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues, you can do a lot worse, and he is going to get you that 8 to 12 points every single week. If he scores a touchdown, even better. They may use him in the run game. They've been saying all season that this is going to be passing to Wan'Dale. It's an extension of the run game. We saw that by, again, that monster target number of 12 targets week 1. I think Wan'Dale Robinson in PPR leagues is a great pickup, and I think he's only like 7% owned right now. Go get him.
Yes. All right, guys, this is going to be a wrap for the Waiver Wire Show. Thank you so much to all of you who tuned in tonight. I am looking right now. I see over 1,000 people watching us on Twitter right now. Thank you to every single person out there who is hanging out with us on this Tuesday evening. If you are a first-time watcher and you haven't hit that subscribe at that like button already, please go do that now. Guys, you can find all of us online. You can find us. We got Erica over here at America108. Don't forget to go look at her waiver article, get some good information on that, fantasyandframes.com. You can find Rich over at Rich Sickles GBM. You got Keith here. Yeah. At Keith Fleming. You got Kev Tompkins. Right. At K Tompkins SII. Oh, no, I did it wrong. Seriously, Tompkins what? Oh, come on. Tompkins II.
You said SII.
Judges?
Yeah.
You said SII.
You said,
it was close.
Mm-hmm.
I did. Well, I'll get it right next week. That's why you need to tune back in for us next week. I am at CC_Perez83. Guys, we will be back next Tuesday and every Tuesday for the rest of this season, 8 p.m. Eastern. We will see you there.
Not if you guys keep picking Saints. I'm not going to be here.
Good night, everybody.